You are watching Auth Masterclass, and today we are going to discuss about refresh token. So in last video we discussed about the regular flow, that is the JWT token, and we added our middleware to do the JWT validation. Now we will extend on top of that and we are going to introduce refresh token. So what is the need of this refresh token? So in previous video I said that your regular auth token should be short-lived, right? So that it will not be misused. But then if you keep the token for short-lived, then that means user has to log in again and again in the short duration. So for example, 15 minutes we added the JWT auth token, right? So what does that mean? After 15 minutes user has to give the user ID and password and log in again. Does that happen when you visit some website, right? Does that ask you to log in after every 15 minutes? No, right? So what is the solution for that one? Of course, refresh token. So what is the concept of refresh token here? So along with your regular access token, you will also get a refresh token. And what you have to do with the refresh token? You will also get a refresh token API in which you can regenerate your access token by passing the refresh token. Okay, so when you do login, you get your access token and a refresh token. Now when your auth token is about to expire, you go to the refresh token API and you give your refresh token, and in turn you get another access token which is valid for say another 15 minutes, right? So that is the flow. So let us quickly start implementing that. And before I do the dev server start, what I want to do, I want to install a package. Okay, so what is the package? So npm install, I will say cookie parser. So this is a middleware which will help us in parsing the cookie, because we are going to work with cookie. I'll tell you where we are going to work. So I'll install this one, and what I will do, I'll say npm run dev. So I'll start the dev server. Okay, great. Now this is starting. So here in the login service we are generating auth token. Okay, now I'll go inside this function, and what I will do, I will write another function. Okay, so export const, I will say generate. Okay, I will say refresh token. Okay, and this will also take a payload, and I will create the function. And here what I will do, I will copy this line. Okay, and here I am reading the JWT auth token, right? Instead what I will read, I'll read the JWT refresh token. Okay, so I'll show you my env file. So if you see here, I have auth token and I have already added the JWT refresh token. Okay, so these two are two different tokens. Okay, so what I will do, I will copy this. Okay, and I will paste it here. Okay, then I can copy this line. Okay, and I can paste it here. So what this will do, this will return jwt.sign payload with which secret, the refresh token secret, and most importantly expire in 7 days. Okay, so I'm saying 7 days based on your business need. If you want, you can change it, right? So my auth token is short-lived, 15 minutes, and my refresh token is long-lived, 7 days. Okay, if you want, you can make it 1 day. If you want, you can make it 30 days, up to your business need, right? Great. Now I'll come back to login service. Okay, and when I'm generating the JWT token, what I will do, let me copy this line so that it will be easy. You don't have to see me typing everything. Okay, so I will say refresh token. Okay, and what this will be, this will be generate refresh token. Okay, and for now the payload will be same. Okay, so we'll take the username and we will take the user ID in the payload. Okay, now question is, how are we going to send the refresh token? Okay, so if you see here, I'm passing the auth token in the response. Okay, so that means when you do login, okay, and in the body you come and you give the username and password. Okay, so you will get the token in the response. Okay, now the front-end client, they can read this information. Okay, perfect. Now what should be the strategy to send the refresh token? Can I send refresh token after this token as a sibling of this token? Would that be a good approach? No, that is not the best approach. Okay, so what we should ideally do, the server should inject the refresh token as a server side HTTP only cookie. Okay, so now what advantage we will get if we send it as a server side cookie? That means only server can read that information, right? Client cannot read that. So no JavaScript library or no JavaScript code can access that cookie. Okay. On the contrary, if you send it as a response value, ultimately you have to store it in session storage or local storage or IndexedDB somewhere, right? And that can easily be read by JavaScript code, which we don't want because it will potentially increase the attack area, right? We don't want that. So we want to securely store it as a cookie, HTTP only cookie that only server can read. Client JavaScript cannot read that cookie. Okay, so how shall we do that? So if you see cookie, we have only one cookie. Do you remember what this cookie was used for? This is the session cookie, right? We were using this to store CAPTCHA and CSRF token, right? So that will still be available with us, right? That is not going anywhere. In the same line, I want to inject another cookie. Great. Now what we will do, we'll come to our code and we have this refresh token, right? Now how can we send this as a cookie? So what we can do is, so we have the response object, right? So I'll say response dot cookie, okay, and we can name it as refresh token. And what will be its value? We can pass this variable, right? Refresh token, and we will pass a configuration object, and here we will say HTTP only to be true. Okay, that means it will be a HTTP only cookie and only server side code can read this. Client cannot read this information, right? Now every time you send a request to the refresh token API, you have to include this cookie, right? And when you are doing it in the browser and even in Postman, it will be automatically included, right? So now let us come to Postman and see what is happening. So we have body, so I'll send a request. Okay, so here I'm able to get a access token. Now if I go to cookie, now if you see here, we have a refresh token here, right? And it has a value, right? A big value. And if you see, HTTP only is marked as true, right? So this is how we should send refresh token to the client. The server should directly inject the cookie. Okay, great. So we are able to send the refresh token, right? Now let us see how to use this. So to use this one, what do I have to do? So what is the purpose of this one? So you send your refresh token and in return you get another access token which is valid for another 15 minutes, right? So you have to keep on repeating this cycle. So our access token is valid for 15 minutes, right? So at 14th minute, what you can do, you can make a call to refresh token API. You pass the refresh token and in return it will give you another access token which is valid for another 15 minutes, right? And after another 14 minutes you have to repeat the process. Okay, so that is the client's responsibility, right? So now we have a refresh token, right? Now what we can do, let us write a refresh token API. What that API will do, this will take this refresh token and it will generate another access token for us. Okay, so now let us do that. Here what I will do, I will come to this service and I'll add a new file. Okay, so I will say refresh token.service.js. okay, and here what I can say, export const refresh token service equals to async. Okay, it will take request and response. Okay, and we will add the function body. Okay, now what we have to do, we have to, so if you remember, we added the cookie parser, right? So what we can do, I'll come to index. Okay, and first thing first, what I have to do, I have to import, I will say cookie parser from the cookie parser npm package. Then what I can do, I can come after the JSON, that is express.json middleware, and I can say app.use and I will say cookie parser. Okay, so it will parse the cookie information for me. Okay, great. Now this is also done. So now we will go back to our refresh token service. Okay, now here first what we have to do, we have to read the refresh token, right? So I can say const refresh token equals to request dot cookies dot refresh token. Okay, and what I can do, let me just do console.log and let me log the refresh token. And just for temporary purpose, otherwise our server will hang, right? So I can say response.status of 200. We'll remove this line. Okay, and JSON, I will say message, and I will say work in progress. Okay, great. Now what I will do, I will come to auth routes. Okay, and here I will say router.post. Okay, here I can say refresh token. Okay, and this will take refresh token service. Okay, now what we will do, we will go to postman. Okay, and here if you see login, let me send another request. Okay, so here we have the refresh token, and if you see the value, last few characters CAWTW, right? So now I'll come to refresh token and I will send the request. Okay, now it must have logged the cookie, right? So you remember what was that? CAWTW, right? So if you see, this has logged, and what is the last characters? CAWTW. That means what? We are able to read the cookie back, right? So this is the cookie that we are setting. Okay, from where? From the login service. Now we are able to read the cookie information. Simple, right? Great. Now what we will do, let me remove this console log for now, right? Not for now, let us remove this one. It is not needed anymore, right? So we will add one validation, if not a refresh token. Okay, what we will do, rest.status. Okay, status of 403 unauthorized. Okay, and JSON. Okay, and I will say message, and I will say, okay, unable to generate access token, right? Feel free to give whatever error message you want to do here, right? And here I will say return, right? Because there is no point in proceeding further. Okay, now what I will do, I'll add a try catch block. Why? Because here I want to do the JSON verify, the JWT token verification, right? And if the verification fail, it will throw error. So I should be able to catch that error, right? Now what we can do, if it comes to this error block, I can return the same error message, right? Now again, when it comes to security, always give only the needed information, right? Here I'm giving the same error message for different scenarios, right? Why? Because if you give specific message, somebody who is trying to hack into your system, or somebody is trying to, or if somebody is trying to do something mischievous, they will get more and more information, right? Here if you say, okay, token is missing, that means they will try to inject a token, right? Here if you say the token validation failed, so then they will try to validate the token. But if you give a generic message, unable to access token or unable to generate access token, they are not sure what is happening, right? It's error message, simple error message, right? So you should give least specific information. Okay, don't give sensitive information. Okay, right? Now what I can say, I can say const payload equals to JWT dot verify. Okay, and here I have to import the JWT, right? So I'll say import JWT from JSON web token. Okay, so verify, what this will verify, this will take the payload. Okay, and it will verify with respect to what? With respect to the secret that we have added in the .env, right? And where is that information? So that is available in this lib. So I'll quickly copy it from here and I'll paste it here, right? And I'll add a space here. Okay, then so now we are able to get the payload back, right? And what will this payload have? This payload will have this object, and if you see here, it should not be underscore d, it should be underscore id. Okay, so this is the payload that we are generating the token out of, right? Now when we decode, what we will get, we'll get back this payload, right, which will have the username and user id, right? So we have the payload back, right? Then what else we can do with this? In this payload we have the user id, right? So using that user id, let us query our table and see if the user exists or not. Okay, now why we need to do that? Because this could be a valid payload, right? But that might have been created for some other reason, right? So you have to make sure that this payload is actually intended for a user login, right? So this payload, which contains the user ID, that user must contain in our system currently, right? It should not be a deleted user, right? Or it should not be a blacklisted user, right? So that means we have blacklisted a user, but it is still trying to generate an access token, which we don't want, right? So let us query the database and see the given payload's user ID actually results into a user object from our table, right? Shall we quickly do that? So I'll say const user equals to await. Okay, I'll say user dot, okay, find one. Okay, find one. How? Find one by username, right? So I will say username equals to, from where I'll get the username? I'll get the username from payload dot username, right? And what error this is throwing? So I have to add the .js, right? So now server is starting, right? So now if not user, then what we will do? We will do this return error message, right? Again, don't give specific information, right? But if you want, across the scenarios, if you want, you can change the message slightly based on your business need, okay, right? So now what we will do, we have to generate the access token, and where we have added the logic, so we have added that logic here, right? So I'll copy it, I'll paste it here, and what I will do, I'll make sure that this method is imported. So I'll say generate auth token. Okay, so when I rewrite it, the VS Code will automatically import it for me. Okay, so JWT token, and I will say send this token back to the user and the import. Okay, right? So now let us test this one. So what I will do, I'll generate a regular, I'll go to the login flow and I'll generate a regular access token here. So I'll send the request. So I get a access token, and here if we go to cookie, we have a refresh token, right? Now what I will do, I'll try to access the protected route. Okay, so I'm able to access the protected route. Now what I will do, I'll go to refresh token API, and here I will send another request. So now if you see, we are getting the message unable to generate access token, right? So let us see what is going wrong here. Okay, so either it could be this value is not correct. So let us go to the lib function and see whether we are actually using this to generate, right? So we are using this one to generate, right? So let us go to verify payload. Okay, so if you see here, it should not be payload, it should be the refresh token, right? It should be refresh token. We are trying to verify the refresh token, and we are trying to generate the payload, right? Now we'll come here, we'll send a request. Now if I send the request again, we are still unable to generate, right? So to see this, what we can do, we'll add a console.log and just see the error message. Okay, so I'll send the request again, and if you see, username is not defined. Okay, so this line. Okay, so what we have to do, here, since username itself is not defined, okay, so it should be a key value pair, right? So if we already have a key with username, instead of doing this, okay, so username equals to username, we could have done simply like this, right? So this is what we have done in login service, right? So here, since we don't have username, so we will add this key value pair. Okay, and we can say user dot username. Okay, user dot username, which is coming from this user object. Okay, now I'll come to Postman and I'll try to send the request again, right? So now this time we are able to generate a new token, right? So what I can do, let me remove this console log. Okay, then now we are able to regenerate the access token, right? So if you see here in body, we are able to generate the access token, and here what I have done, I have added a script. What this script will do, so I have discussed this script in my previous videos, right? So I'm taking the response from pm postman.response.json. Okay, so this is the JSON representation of the response. From there, if the response token value exists, then what I'm doing, I'm setting it in the Postman environment, okay, as auth token, and its value is the refresh token. Protected route, what I'm doing the reverse. Here I'm setting the auth token in the environment. Here I am reading the auth token from the environment, okay, and in authorization header I am sending it. Now the same thing here in script I am doing whatever I was doing in login, reading the token value. Here also now I am reading the token value, and it will override the auth token with our new generated auth token. Okay, so now I'll send this request. That means now the auth token environment variable contains the new token. Okay, so now if I send the request, right, I'm able to request this, right? So this is the protected route. That means our refresh token logic is working. Great. So now we are able to generate the refresh token. Great. So now we are able to regenerate our access token using the refresh token and the refresh token API, right? So is this all about refresh token? No, there are two more concepts. Okay, one is the refresh token recycling. Okay, one is the token versioning. First, let us discuss what is token recycling. Okay, now what we are currently doing, when we do login, we get a refresh token and an access token. Now what we are doing, we are using the access token to access all our APIs, and when access token is about to expire, we are going to refresh token API with our refresh token and asking for another access token. Okay, this is the current flow. Now is this the most secure approach? Do you see a security potential here, security pitfall here? What if the refresh token goes into wrong hand, right? What if someone is trying to misuse that on your behalf, right? So if somebody has access to your refresh token, they can keep on regenerating new access token and they can carry out a lot of malicious activity, right? So there is a fundamental concept of refresh token recycle. That means every time you go to refresh token API with your refresh token and you ask for an access token, the refresh token API will recycle the refresh token and it will regenerate another refresh token. Okay, so login, it used to give you a set of access token and refresh token. Now refresh token API will also give you new set of access token and refresh token both. Okay, that means your old refresh token is no longer valid. You will get another refresh token. Okay, now third time when you are going for the refresh token API, you have to use the newly generated refresh token. Okay, the old one that you got from your login page, that is no longer valid. Okay, that is recycled. Okay, you get a new refresh token as well as an access token from your refresh token API. Okay, that is the concept of refresh token recycling, and it is used to even harden your authentication system. Okay, so shall we see that flow, how we can do that? For this, what we will do, we'll borrow some logic from here, right? So I will copy these two lines, okay, and I will come here and I will paste it here. Okay, and what I will do, I can rename this one, so I can say new refresh token. Okay, and I will send this new refresh token. Okay, now what we are doing, we are generating the auth token as usual, right? And what we are doing, we are regenerating the refresh token. Okay, so I will import it again here. Okay, and here also what I can do, I have to use this, right? I have to pass the user.username in the username property, right? So now if I come to Postman and if I send a request, what I will get, I will get a new token. Okay, and if I come to cookie, you will see another refresh token being added here, right? So what we have done, when we did a login, right, if you go to cookie, we got a refresh token, right? When we try to get a new access token from the refresh token, of course we got a access token in the body, but as well as we got another refresh token in the cookie. That means this token that we got is no longer valid. Okay, this has been recycled, and instead we got another refresh token, right? So this is the concept of token recycling, right? Now this is working fine. Okay, working wise this is working fine, but here there are two potential pitfalls. Okay, let us discuss what is that. So if we go to code, here what we are doing, we are saying generate a refresh token inside this function. Okay, and if you see inside this function, it says expires in 7 days. Okay, so if we used one refresh token, after 7 days it will expire, right? But if we keep on regenerating refresh token every time a refresh token API is called, Okay, it will regenerate this refresh token again with value of this 7 days, right? When we try to regenerate the token again, it will again regenerate it for 7 days, right? So that way our refresh token will never expire. It will keep on regenerating for 7 more days, right? So this refresh token will never expire, right? But what we want it to expire after 7 days, right? So that is the problem number 1. It will never expire, right? Problem number 2, we are doing the recycling, okay, but where is the validation that prevents the old token from being used? If somebody is sending old token, we are doing verify, okay, as long as it has still less than 7 days, the verification will pass, right? And even the find one user validation will pass, right? Because the old token has the 7-day information along with this user information, right? So as long as 7 days is not passed, the old token are still valid. But what we actually intended to do, we want to recycle the token. That means old token should not be valid. In turn, the new token should be used and only that token should be valid. Now, what prevents someone from still using the old token, old refresh token, right? Because it will still be valid for 7 days, right? So where is that validation? So 2 problems. It will always keep on regenerating for 7 days and it will actually never expire, and we are not actually invalidating the old token. Somebody can still use the old token, right, as long as it is less than 7 days, right? So what is the solution for that one? So what we can do, we can store the current refresh token in the database. Okay, now when we will do the insert, in the login flow we will do the insert when first time refresh token is being generated. Okay, now next time when we are doing a token refresh API and we are trying to do a token recycle, what we can do, we can update that token for that particular user ID. Okay, now what has happened, we have updated the token every time we are doing a refresh. Now before coming to this payload, okay, what we can do, we can check that refresh token if it exists in the database, right? If it is an old token, right, here when we regenerate that token, we would have overridden that value in the database, right? So when somebody is trying to access the old token, we'll do a validation if that old token exists in the database. Of course it won't exist, right? Why? Because this regenerate refresh token has already overridden that one, right? So that way old token will no longer be valid, right? Because we are taking only one token from the database. If that is the token, we will proceed, we'll generate a new token, update the database value, send the refresh token, right? Now coming to the 7-day value, what we can do in MongoDB or in any database, what we can do, we can add a TTL index. Okay, TTL index means time to live. So what we can do, every time a row is inserted, okay, we can set a TTL index of 7 days. So when 7 days pass, the row will automatically be deleted, right? And in refresh token logic, in refresh token service, we are doing the database validation, right? So when somebody is sending a token, and if it has already been 7 days since the user has done login, okay, that means 7 days has passed. So by this time the database value would have been deleted. So when we try to read the value, it will fail, right? And once it fails, we can immediately tell the user that even your refresh token is no longer valid, you have to do a login again with your username and password, right? So that is the flow. Let us implement that. So that is the flow. Even if it is confusing, let us do the implementation together, and once we are done with the implementation, it will be much clearer. Okay, so first what I need a schema, right? So I'll go to my schema folder, okay, and here what I will do, I'll add a new file, okay, and I will say refresh token.schema.js, right? And first thing first, what I need to do, I need to import mongoose from mongoose, okay. Then I will say const refresh token schema equals to new mongoose.schema, okay, and it will take a configuration object, okay. So first thing is the token, okay, token. What will be the type of this one? Type of this one will be string, and is this going to be a required value? So this is going to be a required true. Okay, and then we will have the user ID. Okay, what will be the user ID? So this user ID will point to the user schema, right? So for that, what we can do, we can say type will be of mongoose dot schema dot types dot object ID. Okay, and this will point to, okay, what this will point to the user. Okay, user schema. And is this going to be a required? So I'll say true. Okay, then I can say created at, okay, and this will be type of date. Okay, and default value will be date dot now. Okay, and here one comma is missing. Okay, that's why it was giving squiggly. Okay, now coming to the TTL index. Okay, so I can say refresh token schema dot index. Okay, index first value, what it will take? It will take created at as 1. That means with reference to created at field, you create the index. Okay, and what are the property of this index? It will say expire after seconds. Okay, after how many seconds? So this many seconds. Okay, what is this? 7 days. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm saying based on created at, after these many seconds have elapsed, delete this. Expire after second, that means expire the document after this many seconds has passed with respect to created at. Okay, and then I can say const refresh token equals to mongoose dot model. Okay, mongoose dot model, I'll say refresh token, and what this is going to use, this is going to use the refresh token schema. Okay, and I'll say export default refresh token. Okay, okay, so I'll do the export default of the refresh token. Right now, when doing the login, okay, we are generating the refresh token. Okay, here we should be able to insert it, right? So let us do that. So here what I can do, I can say const refresh token schema, okay, equals to new refresh token, okay, and here what value we will pass? We will pass the token, okay, which is the refresh token, okay, and the user ID, okay, which is going to be user dot underscore ID. Okay, now what we can do, we can say refresh token schema dot save, and we will await on this, right? That means when we are generating the user access token and refresh token, we will insert it into the database, right? So now let us go to login. Okay, and here I will bring the Mongo compass, and here what I will do, I will do a database refresh. Okay, so if you see, we have refresh token schema, but as of now we don't have anything here, right? So now what we will do, we'll go to login. Okay, and body will send the ID and password, right? We will send the request. Okay, so we'll get a body with this access token. Okay, and in the cookie we'll have the refresh token. Okay, now we'll come to database. Okay, and we'll do a refresh. Okay, so now we have the token and we have the user ID, right? So now we are able to store the information in our database, right? Now what we will do, we will go to our refresh token. Okay, refresh token service. Now here we have the payload, right? Now what we can do, let us search for this payload in our database. Okay, so I'll say const stored token, okay, equals to, I'll say await refresh token dot find, okay, find how, find, okay, find, and how we are going to find, we are going to find by user ID, and from where we will get the value, we'll get the value from payload dot user ID, right? Now if this token is not available, okay, so if not stored token, okay, we will throw error, right? So I will copy this line and I will paste it here, right? So what we have done, we are checking the database if this token exists or not, right? If this token doesn't exist, that means it is a old token, right? Okay, now here we are regenerating the token, right? So here what I can do, I can say await, okay, refresh token dot find one and update. Okay, now how we are going to find one? We are going to find one by user ID, and it should have the value of payload dot user ID, right? So it should have this value. Okay, now with what value we are going to update it? So I'll say token equals to new refresh token, right? And I will add a comma, and I will add new to true. That means it will return the new object. Okay, but anyways, I'm not assigning it back. So this parameter is not needed. Just for reference I have added. Okay, so what we are doing now, we are updating the refresh token, right? So now let us do this flow. So what I will do, I'll come to the database. Okay, and what I will do, I will delete this one, right? Now what I will do, I'll come to my login page, okay, and I will send a request. Okay, so now I will come to database and I will refresh it. Okay, so if you see here, okay, if I scroll to the end, it says dvuc, okay, which is this one, dvuc, right? Now I will come to refresh token and I will refresh it. Okay, so now I will come to the refresh token, and it is 2AUGZG, right? So I will come here, I will cancel this, I will refresh it. Okay, so now if you see here, right, so it is 2AUZZ, right, which is this one. So what has happened, we have updated with this new value, right? So now what will happen if somebody is sending this value? Does this value exist in the database? No, right? So this is a older token. So that means this validation that we have added, okay, this one, stored token, find by user ID, right? So for this user ID, okay, for this particular user ID, what is the token? That ends with 2AUZZ, right? So if somebody sends this token that ends with DVUC, this no longer exists, right? So what will happen? We will get empty result and it will immediately throw out the error, right? So somebody cannot use the old token now, right? So one problem solved, right? So old token cannot be used. Now coming to the timestamp. So what will happen here? So if you see the schema, we are creating the TTL index of 700 of 7 days. So after 7 days, automatically this will be deleted, right? So after 7 days, when we try to run this query, what will happen? Of course, this stored token will not have any value, so we'll return this error, right? So now we are able to solve both our problem. So no one can use the old token, and after 7 days, after 7 days, the refresh token will be invalid, right? So anyways, after that, user has to do a login by giving the username and password, right? And we are also able to recycle the refresh token, right? So even if the old token has been compromised, okay, we'll always be able to regenerate a new refresh token as well as a access token, and old token cannot be used, right? Great. Now there was one more concept on this refresh token, that is token versioning. Okay, now suppose there is some mischievous activity happening on the user account and admin wants to block the access, complete access. Okay, or say for example, user has done a password reset, okay, or user has clicked on forget password, right, and user has done a password reset, right? Now all the old tokens, okay, if the refresh token has been compromised, right, what will happen? User has done a password reset. Okay, now what we want to do, we want to invalidate that. Okay, but remember this token is already there in our database, right? So if somebody is using the old refresh token, it will still be valid, right? So to solve this, what we will do, we are going to use token versioning. Okay, so here on user schema, okay, we'll have a token version. what is the current token version of the user. Okay, and that token version will pass it as a payload to our refresh token. Okay, when we do a decode, okay, we will get the token version and we will also get the user object. From the user object, that is by doing the database query, we will find the current token version. That current token version will match with the payload token version. If that matches, that means it is genuine request. Now, what if some mischievous activity has happened and either user has reset their password, okay, or admin has reset the account, okay? So what in that flow, what will happen? We will increment the user schema version, okay? So it will start with version 1, okay, and with that version 1 we will generate the refresh token. Now in between, what we will do, either admin or the user has reset the password. So essentially what we will do here, we'll increment the version to 2. Right now the refresh token has a version of 1. Here we have a version of 2, right? So we'll do the version comparison. If the version comparison is not passing, that means something has happened. The version has been incremented. That means all the previous token or all the token that has been generated with the payload of the previous version are invalid, right? That way we will be able to add more security to your account, okay, and admin can quickly block access to all the previously generated refresh tokens, right? All the previously generated refresh tokens, right? So what we will do, we'll add version, the same version we'll add it to payload, and when the payload comes, we will compare the payload version versus the version we have in the database, right? If it matches, well and good. If it doesn't matches, throw the error, right? So that way we'll be able to enhance the security. So somebody resets the password, or admin resets the password, or admin revokes some credentials, right? So in that case, all the previously generated refresh token will be invalid, right? Now we have much more tighter control on our authentication system, right? So for that, what we will do, we will go to our user schema, okay, and after the email, what we can do, we can say token version, okay, this will be of type, okay, number, and what will be default to 1, okay. That means when a user registers itself, the token version will be 1, okay. Now remember, when user logs out, okay, at that time we are not going to increment the version. We are simply going to delete the refresh token from the database, that particular document, right? This token versioning is a very rare use case that will happen not every time. Like login is going to happen say every 2 to 3 days, or logout is going to happen every 2 to 3 days, or every 1 hour, right? That we cannot control, and that time we are not going to increment the version. When we are going to increment the version, when something very sensitive has happened, right? One example is admin is trying to block the user account, right? So at that time we will increment the version, or user clicks on password reset, right? So at that time we are going to increment the version, okay. So incrementing version is not a day-to-day use case, just like login and logout, okay. These are very rare use cases, okay. So always keep that in mind, right? So when a user register, the default version will be 1, okay. Now coming to the login service, okay. So here we are generating the refresh token, okay. So here we will pass the token version, okay. So we'll pass the token version, and from where we will get the token version, it is in the user, right? So we have the user object coming from the database, right? So what we can do, we can say user dot token version. So this will be part of our payload now, okay. And the same thing, where else we have to do, we have to do it on the refresh token service, okay. So here also we have the user, and here we are generating the refresh token, okay. So here we will pass the token version, okay. Token version coming from user dot token version, okay. Now here we are getting the user, and if the user doesn't exist, we are throwing error, okay. If the user exists, okay, what we will do, if, okay, user dot token version is not equal to okay, not equal to what? Payload dot token version. Okay, then what we can do? We can return the error, right? That means the token mismatch has happened. That means you are no longer going to use this refresh token. Okay, you are logged out and you have to use another refresh token, right? Now if you see here in the database, okay, in the refresh token, okay, this token will still be exist, right? So what we have to do, every time there is a error that has happened, right, either the user doesn't exist or the token mismatch happens, right, any error scenario, okay, what we have to do, we have to delete the refresh token entry, right? So that what we are expecting the user to relog in, right? But as long as we have a refresh token, right, what will happen, we will keep on entering the token value with, we'll be keep on adding new token version for the same user ID and different token versions, right? And it will become a mess. We'll keep on adding, right? So every time error scenario happens, what we have to do, we have to delete the refresh token value, right? So here one error scenario, if the stored token doesn't exist, right? Here we don't have to delete anything because it doesn't exist, right? Now here, if the user doesn't exist, right, so the token should also not exist, right? So what we can do here, we can say await refresh token dot delete one, okay, delete one, how? By user ID, and from where this will come? This will come from payload dot user ID, okay. Here you should not use user dot user ID because user doesn't exist, right? Okay, so I will copy this one, and when the version doesn't match, then also we'll delete the token ID. We'll delete the token from the token schema, token collection, right? Now what will happen? And here also on error scenario, okay, anytime a 403 error is sent in the refresh token API, that means we are now forcing the user to do another login by giving their ID and password, right? Why? Because we are deleting the refresh token and all further validation will immediately fail. Either we have deleted the refresh token or we have incremented the version. In either way, the old refresh token is no longer valid. So we will delete it from the system so that the login service can do a fresh insert, right, based on our need, right? So what we can do, we will go to our database, okay, and the user, what we can do, we can add a field, okay, add another field, and I will call it as token version, okay. Otherwise what I have to do, I have to do a fresh user registration, right? So to avoid that, what I'm doing, I'm just doing I'm manually setting the token version as 1, okay. Otherwise I have to do the registration flow again, right? And in the same line, what I will do, I'll remove the refresh token, okay. Why? Because this refresh token doesn't contain the payload, right? So every time when I try to access the refresh API, it will throw the error, right? Because this doesn't have the version, right? So what I will do, I'll delete this one and I will come to login, okay, and I'll do a fresh API call, okay. So now this token has version, okay. Now with this token, if I go to refresh token API, I'll be able to generate it, okay. So I can generate it once again. Now what I will do, just to simulate, okay, I will come here and I will increment the version, okay. Of course, if you want, you can create an API to do the version increment, okay, that admin can use, right, to invalidate all the refresh token for a particular user, right? Now what will happen, I have the refresh token in my environment variable or in my cookie, right? Now the version has been incremented, right? So now if I send a request, what has happened? Unable to generate access token. Why? Because your token version has been incremented in the backend, right? Now if you come here, okay, you go to refresh token, okay, we don't have anything anymore, right? Why? Because it was deleted. So that way, now user is forced to do a fresh login, right? Now a fresh login, when user will do, he will be able to access the protected route and he will be able to access the refresh token API. right? Now if you see refresh token, a refresh token is created, right? Now this refresh token has what version? Version 2, right? It has version 2. Now I'll increment it to 3, okay, and I'll update it. So if you see here, we have the refresh token, right? Refresh token with version 2. User is now on version 3, okay? Now if I send a request, unable to generate access token, okay? And if you go to refresh token and refresh, deleted, right? That means your version has been updated, so all the previous refresh token is no longer valid, right? So this is a quick security measure that you can do to prevent further tampering of user account, okay? Increment the version, all refresh token are invalid, right? And this is even more critical when you are doing multiple device login, okay? User can log in from a mobile device, it can log in from a tablet, it can log in from multiple laptops and multiple desktop computers, right? So in that case, user will have different refresh tokens stored in each of the system. And if you say log out from all device, or the admin feels that something mischievous is happening, what it will do, it will increment the user version, okay? Then all the refresh tokens stored in all the devices are together become invalid because they have the old version, right? Although in our scenario we don't have multiple refresh token or multiple device concept, but this is more useful when you are dealing with that high level of stuff, okay? For our stuff it is simple, but concept wise everything is covered, right? So this is all about refresh token. So what did we learn? We learned how to generate refresh token. We learned how to send the refresh token. We learned the concept of token recycling, okay? And we learned the different potential pitfalls when we are doing token recycling, and we solved those. Also we learned about token versioning and where and how it is used, right? So with this, the concept of refresh token is completed. And if you like this video, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.